That's a good question. I believe that some of these skulls we've been finding around the planet are actually our cousins, and that they had bigger skulls, bigger brains, maybe even bigger pineal glands. I believe they were more intelligent than us, not technologically, but spiritually. They can probably speak, through psychic abilities, and silently sending information back and forth, navigating the world. Maybe they had full use of their magnetic crystals in their brain. We all have magnetite in our brains, but we don't feel the magnetic field. But they probably navigated utilizing that Earth's magnetic field. And I think that they were on their own path, and that genetic modification did a couple of things. Number one, it shrunk the brain. Number one, it shrunk the pineal gland. It disconnected some DNA, which is why they call it junk DNA. It detached some of our DNA. Some of our nodes have been pulled away to take us away from knowing our higher selves spiritually. And so they can program and code us. So they began then programming and encoding us in the way that they wanted us to go. We now have to regain and re-find out who we truly are, because it's all still inside of us.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up there are scientists just like say 99-ish% of DNA is junk DNA, non-encoding DNA that we really didn't understand there was a purpose for, but now we are starting to understand there actually is.
Yes, exactly. And they're finding out in genetics like, oh, wait, this DNA actually really does have some purpose in it. And they're finding out that DNA is a storage medium. It can store data. They found out that DNA, one drop of DNA can store 433 petabytes of data, and now they've even increased that amount. So a human body can store 13.5 billion years of data, which is amazingly how old the universe might be.
So again, what does the term Anunnaki mean? Can you talk a little bit about their physicality, like what these stories say they look like and their build and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm, yep. So the Anunnaki, there's a lot of depictions of them that have been left behind, fortunately for us. So we can see that they were really big people. They were mighty men. If you look at even Gilgamesh, for example, who was only half Anunnaki, every time you see a depiction of him, he's holding a full-grown male lion in his arms with one arm. He's yoking a lion, and he's standing up, and the lion's feet aren't even close to the ground. He was known as a big, big man. They called him a hero of old. They called him a savant. And so some of these beings, according to the estimates, could have been as much as 15, 20 feet tall. Real big people, massive people. Over time and through mating with humans, they began to get smaller.
Physicality, like you think they looked like, or we look like them?
Oh yeah, we look like them. They said, let us make man in our image. That made it into the biblical text. It originates in the tablets. So they're making us in their image. They've cultivated us to look like them. Now, not that we actually are a replica of them, but the similarities are striking. In other words, you can always tell the slight difference. Even in biblical texts, they have the Anak, that's the Anunnaki. It says in their eyes, we were grasshoppers in their eyesight in the Bible. So we're talking about big people. They say, like, for example, at the Sodom and Gomorrah, when one of these Anunnaki angels was walking into the camp to warn them, like, some of y'all got to get out of here because there's a nuclear weapon about to strike. It's pretty much what's going to happen. They recognized the person not as a normal human being, but also they knew right away from the way the person looked that this was, quote unquote, an angel, or in my opinion, an alien. So it looked like us, but maybe there were some slight differences, more or less probably most likely the size of the body and probably the head.
And so Anunnaki is a bucket term from the beings that came from Mars down to Earth around.
Not just Mars, anywhere in the solar system, anywhere in space. Mm-hmm. You can come from 10 different stars and come to Earth, you're still an Anunnaki. Like if we and you went to Mars and the Martian said, hey guys, where are you from? You're not going to say, man, I'm Andre from Beverly Hills, right? I'm Billy Carson from Miami, Florida. We're going to say we're Earthlings.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So, and the reason from them coming, there was a resource issue on Mars or something, is the reason why they came down?
Well, not really a resource issue. The reason why they came down is because they felt like they were being overworked. They were commissioned to clean out the Euphrates and Tigris rivers here on Earth, create canals and build cities, and also do the same exact thing on Mars. There were two civilizations running concurrently, one on Mars and one on Earth, according to the tablets, not according to me. On the Mars planet, which was a habitable moon that used to orbit this other planet, that's a whole nother story, conditions were rough and tough, and they felt like they were being enslaved versus being just volunteers. And that's when they said, we've made a lot of demands, and none of our demands have been met. So now we're going to fight for what we want.
How are you personally discerning what you decide when looking at these ancient texts, which ones you take literally versus metaphorically?
It's tough in some ways. Like the Enuma Elish, for example, you could it could be a war that's in our solar system in space with planets colliding into planets and blowing up and all of this. It could be maybe it's a war, But I see some of that really as the formation of the solar system. You kind of have to have a little bit of understanding and grasp of some astrophysics, some basic science, and have read enough things here and there to kind of put the pieces of your own puzzle together. Some of it is up for interpretation, which is why I always encourage everyone to go and read these tablets for themselves. So I don't want to be the only person that's, have this knowledge. There's now dozens of authors, thankfully, but I think everyone deserves the right to be able to go and look this information up for themselves.
One thing that's interesting is seeing, the different structures that have such incredibly intelligent ancient architecture that point to builders that would have much more incredible tools or knowledge or capabilities than often even we would in modern day times right now. And so, much of your work in doing all of this is like seeing how all these puzzle pieces kind of fit together to fit a cohesive potential story of,
right.
An alternative view of where we come from. And so when you're looking at the different pyramids and
temples and ancient sites,
from Egypt and Africa and South America, what do you think is the purpose of how they were built, of the purpose they served? And
they all had individual purposes. For example, the Great Pyramid at Giza and that plateau is a multifunctional platform or plateau. The Great Pyramid is a multifunctional stone computer, number one. It used to be a power generator, so it generated power as the water used to flow underneath it from the Nile. It's now meandered very, very far away. But back then, it ran right up to the pyramid, and the empty tubes have actually been inside of underneath the pyramid are still there where the water used to flow. When you have running water underneath crystal magnetized granite, you create something called physiostatic electricity. Those ions rush up into the chamber, and they will go into the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery used to have resonating rods. Now, the rods have been removed, but the slots where they went up the Grand Gallery are still there till this very day. Then that energy would be pushed into the King's Chamber, which you've been in with me, right? We meditated in there. Inside the King's Chamber, now that area is like a fusion chamber, and the energy would shoot up through the top, through the apex, and now you have wireless energy. Nikola Tesla tapped into the same exact understanding of how that worked and duplicated it with the Wardenclyffe Tower. Now that wireless energy would transmit around the area, and the crystal granite obelisks would capture it. And then if you had something called a JED, a DJED, it looks almost like a Tesla coil with a cable coming out of it. You'll see it in Egyptian hieroglyphs. It's connected to light bulbs and other technologies, electric gold plating. You can then power it wirelessly from the ambient electricity that's been transmitted from miles away from the Great Pyramid. That's just one purpose. Another purpose, when you look at the way that the Great Pyramid is designed in the Queen's Chamber and then you have the King's Chamber, well, water was set to rush down and into the Queen's Chamber. And with the chemistry and also the metallics down there, you can see how there would be some form of electrolysis that would occur. And I'm not the only one that has this hypothesis. Engineer Christopher Dunn had the same exact hypothesis as me. I just found out about maybe a month ago when I finally talked to him on my podcast. So this electrolysis would extract hydrogen from the oxygen, the H2O, and then you have a hydrogen chamber. So now, what's interesting about that, the way it's connected to the shafts that lead up into space, when you look at the pyramid alignment with the stars on certain millennial alignments, you find out that it aligns with Orion, it aligns with Aldebaran, it aligns with Pleiades, it aligns all these star systems. And what is the frequency that we transmit information on right now from a standpoint of trying to connect with ET? We transmit on the hydrogen frequency because it's the most widely abundant frequency in the universe. So I believe in my hypothesis, I always say hypothesis versus what I read, is that these shafts would shoot the hydrogen beams out towards those stars on certain particular alignments with information, data encoded into the hydrogen. In other words, an update on this breakaway civilization. It was a communications device, long-range communications to other stars. And then it also is a star map. when you look down at Giza from above, you see the Great Pyramid, the other two pyramids, and you see the temples around. And you can actually connect those with lines and then make circles, concentric circles. You'll get the interplanetary map of our solar system. You'll get the sun in the middle, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and you'll even get Mars. And when you take the NASA map of our solar system and you overlay it, it matches down to the millimeter. That's crazy. It even matches to the astronomical unit, which is the distance from the Earth to the sun. That's a measurement unit to count distances in the vastness of space. So how can this be done? Somebody had super advanced foreknowledge. Then the Great Pyramid itself it's in the center of the Earth, not the center of the Earth in particular being the center like the navel, but it's in the center of landmass of the Earth. Now, in order to do that, you have to have a satellite, but not any kind of satellite. If we were going to duplicate that today, we would have to have a polar orbiting satellite. It would have to orbit the planet this way, and as the planet spins on its axis, it would take swaths of data. It would calculate the total amount of mass and pinpoint this is the center of landmass. The next thing is the height of the Great Pyramid is the average height of all the peaks on the planet Earth. So again, you need a polar orbiting satellite. And you have to scan every single peak and mountain that exists on the planet. Then you got to do some simple mathematics to divide it all and come up with the average height and say, okay, that's the height we want to build it to. This whole thing was left behind as a gigantic time capsule for us to unwind and be like, holy crap, these people were amazing. You know, I mean, they had everything calculated and built into this for the time when you and I come to figure it out. And Thoth in the Emerald Tablet says, builded I the Great Pyramid patterned after Earth's force, so that it too might remain through the ages. This is Hermes Trismegistus, 3 times born. Hermes and Thoth are the same exact person. You find that they have many names in different time periods. But he says he built the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. He claims that he's the master architect and the bringer of thought and the bringer of alchemy and chemistry, which is why that place was called Kemet. Chemistry and alchemy come out of there. And he went around the world duplicating that. He goes to Mesoamerica, which is now South America, and he builds Teotihuacan in Mexico, right?